Hi, good afternoon. This is the Democratic Alliance Labour Report, Friday the 14th of April 2023. I'm going to call this broadcast Armageddon, not to frighten anyone, not to shoot your mouth open, but certainly to have a look at an Armageddon type situation which could possibly happen here. I'm not saying it will, but it could possibly happen here. There is a distinct possibility of a countrywide blackout. We know that Eskom has been a nightmare for months, years. We have had 2022, which was about 10 times worse than the previous years. And now we're going into even worse situation with Eskom, despite the new bright spark, the Minister of Electrical Affairs, or whatever you would call him. And so the reality is the Democratic Alliance is looking at this very carefully, and each and every single member of the Democratic Alliance is doing what they can to try and avert this blackout, this countrywide blackout. And if it happens, we need to be prepared for it. We need to refer to previous instances where this has happened around the world. In particular, people won't have great knowledge of it, but in New York City and New York itself, it happened twice. They had two blackouts right across New York in 1965 and 1977. And that should teach us a thing or two of what actually transpires in blackouts. So I'm going to talk a bit about that today. I'm Michael Bagram. I'm the Labour spokesperson for the Democratic Alliance. And thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to this report. Share with your friends if you're happy with it. I think it is important. Like I said, it's Friday, the 14th of April, 2023, and this is the Democratic Alliance Labour Report. So as I said, there were two blackouts that we could refer to in New York. In particular, the 1977, not too long ago, but in 1977, we had a major problem in New York. It explained what happened and why it started tripping across the state. Well, yes, that did happen, but the problem was they had rioting, they had looting, and this was in America. So you can imagine with a functional police force, functional systems, they still had the rioting and they still had the looting. And so over here, where we can refer back to KwaZulu-Natal and parts of Gauteng only 18 months ago, you saw what transpired there. We had a dysfunctional police, we had dysfunctional army, we had no communications, and we had no stomach from government. And the ANC government had no stomach to stop people with the rioting and the looting. And so we need to be prepared that when we do, and if we do, have a blackout across the country, how do we do it? And it could have a similar instance over here. Now, the reality is that KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng wasn't because of electricity. It was, I think people were in essence upset. They were poor, they couldn't find jobs, and then they used the coat hanger of the Zuma prosecution, and they went completely mad. Now, what we'll have over here is something probably more guttural, something where the people are feeling that they're just not getting anywhere, and they're quite right. So the only province in South Africa today, it happens to be a Democratic Alliance-led province, is the Western Province, which is actually doing something about it. First of all, they're working hell for leather to ensure that at the end of the day we have electricity. And they said it'll take another 4, maybe 5 years before we're off the grid, but we can't wait that long, and they need to prepare themselves in case something actually happens. And that is what they're doing. From a labour law point of view, the Democratic Alliance is also carefully looking at plans. We're looking at ways and means of employers being able to cope and at least try their utmost to ensure that their staff are obviously recompensed. We need to ensure that people can get something. We'll have to have a look at national government for that. But we also need to be ensured that the staff are safe, that employers are fully up with their plans, and that they're doing their utmost to ensure that when work is available, that staff are able to do that work. Okay, so the first step, obviously, that one needs to do as an employer, and as the Democratic Alliance, we're looking at this very carefully, And as a labor lawyer, I'm saying to every single employer, please do a careful audit of all your staff. make sure you have all their details, next of kin, their home address, what their circumstances are at home. Have they got some sort of physical security at home? In terms of travel, and there will be times when they could travel during this blackout, how could you get them to work? How could you get them home? And in terms of their personal circumstances, how many children, where do they go? Is there a spouse, a partner? Are they elderly parents? All that sort of thing that you need to do as an employer. You need to do that. So there needs to be a proper audit of your entire staff. And as the Democratic Alliance, we are working on this, and we are saying to the employers, and I've been talking to employers all the time who are asking me this now very seriously, what do we do during a blackout? Now, we've had some experience in the sense that we had the COVID-19. And during COVID-19, again, I spent hours and days, months, and even years explaining to employers what can be done from a Democratic Alliance point of view. We had put together plans. We had applied for the TERS claims from the UIF. We had, in certain instances, had to claim for the compensation fund. And we help people do this as a political party, and in particular the Democratic Alliance. We had to do this. Funny enough, right through that exercise and during those 2 years of the pandemic, I had councillors from other political parties, in particular from the ANC, asking me to help out their activists, their members. Of course, I couldn't turn it down. I remember speaking to my chief whip at the time, and she said, these are people, they're South Africans, we must help. So as a political party, we need to ensure that people are safe, that people are treated properly. Never mind where they are and what their belief is, we need to help them. So as a Democratic Alliance, that's what we're doing. And we're making sure that these plans could be applicable to anyone. It's not just for Democratic Alliance members or activists. No, not at all. So we need to ensure that every single staff member across the country has a proper audit. We know where we're going, we know where they're going, and we know how to handle this when something happens. Of course, I want every employer to have a look at their workplace, including upgrading any non-electrical upgrades. So if you can put up wire fences, strong walls, make sure that you are ready in case there is some sort of looting that does take place. I know in the Western Province, they're making sure that they can get it done properly, and they're making sure that people are safe and sound in the Western Province. But we've got to look at the rest of the country at the same time. So the security of each workplace must be carefully explored at the work premises. And even then, at your work premises, it might be useful just to have the bare minimum of stock. It might be useful also to have essentials that you might need, and to ensure that at the end of the day, if you can get some work done, you get some work done. At the same time, ensuring that the staff are all safe and the premises are safe. Then you might keep some fuel, and of course make sure that every single staff member is properly registered with the UIF, with the compensation fund. We had a nightmare during COVID where employers were coming to me on a daily basis, in fact over 2,000, came to me and said, well, we're not fully up to date with our UIF or compensation fund, which created a whole different nightmare. Over and above the pandemic, we had to try and sort that out. So it's sorted out now. Let's not wait for anything that might happen. I'm not saying that there will be a blackout. I'm not saying that this is inevitable. All I'm saying is it's better to be safe than sorry. Better to be safe than sorry. And in essence, there is that outside remote possibility that we have this complete shutdown of the electrical system. It might be useful also to get things like walkie-talkies that are not reliant on the electrical system, because all the cell phone towers will go down. They don't keep charged for 2 days. And if we do have a blackout, it could take days, if not weeks, even months, to put it together again. So communication will be very necessary with other means. We need to ensure that we have communication with our staff to make sure that the staff are fully aware of what's going on, maybe warm clothing, and like I said, keep some extra fuel on the premises. The possibility we might need to go into retrenchments. Again, we're going to be putting together a paper on this. It might be necessary if this company or the employer is unable to sustain itself, it might be necessary to go through the retrenchments. Already I've been consulting with factories as to how they can approach this. Many people are asking, and of course it's individualized. You must have a look at your circumstances, have a look at that audit, and make sure that we've got the luxury of time at the moment. We've got the luxury of no panic. Let's do it now. It can always stand in good stead. If we have one day, 10 years time, 20 years time, another pandemic, we'll be ready. So thank you for listening to me. Thank you for tuning in to the Democratic Alliance Labour Report. It's Friday, the 14th of April, 2023, and it's Michael Bagram, MP, Labour spokesperson for the Democratic Alliance.